How's it going, guy? Joe here. Today I'm gonna react to a voice recording that I made probably about 2 years ago at this point. Actually, almost exactly 2 years ago today, about 2 years and 10 days on lucid dreaming. So basically, I made a voice recording talking about lucid dreaming and, of course, my passion about it and that sort of thing. Because I sometimes do voice recordings on my hobbies, and one of them is lucid dreaming, so no surprise that I would be doing that on there. But anyway, there's a ton of misinformation that I had on the voice recording because I honestly didn't know any better at the time, so I've done a bit more research on the subject and those things, so I'm going to be reacting to one of the voice recordings I made talking about wilds, which is a lucid dreaming concept. So, yeah, I'm going to be reacting to that voice recording today, essentially. So, without further ado, let's just get started. So, basically, as far as lucid dreaming information goes, I used to watch a lot of the misinformation merchants. I'm not going to really name any names, but I would highly recommend checking out this channel for lucid dreaming instead. Lucid Dream Portal. It's run by a guy named Daniel Love, and he's had about 4 decades of experience with lucid dreaming, and he's been teaching it for about 2 decades. So I would recommend checking out this channel for lucid dreaming. There's other good channels as well, but I would check this one out in particular because this is the main one I watch at the moment, and he's got good information and actually does his research and stuff, and it's where I learned a lot of the mistakes I've been making that I'm gonna react to today. So I would highly recommend checking this channel out. So anyway, yeah, I'm gonna be reacting to some of the misinformation that I spread at the time. So this is actually about a month before the state of the world changed. I don't want to get into that too much, of course, but this is recorded about a month before that first started. So yeah, anyway, let's start watching now. I will give a disclaimer that I probably don't know everything yet, and because there's a lot of information, I might still make mistakes even in this recording, but I'll clean it up a considerable amount compared to what I was doing before. I'm not really prepared for this, but we'll just see what happens. So let's start reacting, shall we? So yeah, so I'm gonna be reacting. It's about 40 minutes long, and I anticipate with me talking, it'll be at least double this live stream and stuff. So looks like we're going. It's good. You probably already knew the answer, but I didn't, so yeah. So let's start reacting to the recording now. Everything should work according to plan, so let's start listening to it. I want to do this because I want you to see just how different things really are compared to what I was teaching before. So this in particular is about wilds, and when I talked about that a while ago. So yeah, let's get to it. Ready?
Okay, let's talk about wild or wake-induced lucid dreaming.
Already mistake number 1. So wild does not stand for wake-induced lucid dreaming, as I said in here. It's wake-initiated lucid dream. The reason why that is because, sorry about my mic, but there's 2 types of lucid dreams, essentially. There's dials, which is dream-initiated lucid dream, and wild, which is wake-initiated lucid dream. So essentially, yeah, sorry, I did really practice for my explanation, so they might not be the greatest, but I'll try my best. So essentially, like I said, there's 2 types of lucid dreams. You could either have a lucid dream where you're dreaming and then you realize it in the middle of the dream. So essentially, you have a dream and you're adding awareness to your dreaming, or else you can start from wakefulness and fall asleep consciously into a dream. So you have awareness and then you're adding consciousness, or you're adding dreaming to your awareness. So wake initiated lucid dream is where you fall asleep consciously and have awareness the entire time. Dream initiated lucid dream is where you realize you're dreaming sometime in the middle of the dream that was already going. So yeah, wake induced lucid dream is the wrong abbreviation, and it's also, as I'm going to get into later, it's not a technique. I am going to be getting into this later, so yeah, let's continue. And I'm probably going to be face palming a lot, just so you know, because of all these mistakes I made. It's so embarrassing. Anyway, let's listen.
Now, this is definitely not for beginners, but
And it depends. It could be for beginners, but certainly going to be easier for some people than others. So there's essentially techniques to induce a wild, but wild itself is not a technique. Pretty much all techniques will either induce or initiate a dialed or a wild. All techniques will essentially get you to one of those two things, pretty much every one of them. So like today, I got lucid because I realized I was dreaming in the middle of a dream, so I had a dialed. I don't know if I have hands that represent. I think I'll do dialed, wild. So I had it dialed because I realized I was dreaming in the middle of the dream. And I almost had a wild as well, so that could have been like where I had awareness as I went into the dream. Well, technically a dialed, which is dream exit induced lucid dream. It's very confusing, but that's essentially you wake up from a dream, and sometimes when you wake up from a dream you might go right back in. I'm sure you've heard of that happening before, but if you wake up and then go back in with awareness, then that's a wild. A dialed is essentially a wild induction technique. And this only happens if you've been dreaming and then you wake up and go back into a dream consciously. I almost had one of those today, but I thought I accidentally woke up during dream formation, but I actually did not. So essentially, I had awareness as I was going into the dream, but because I thought I woke up, I assumed I was awake and made that mistake. So I technically, that wasn't a wild, but if I had awareness during the dream, then it would have been a wild. Even though I was dreaming prior to it, I woke up and started entering the dream consciously, essentially. So that would have been a wild in that case. But yeah, what am I getting at? I'm gonna have to go back a couple seconds. I forget where I was.
for beginners, but
Oh, so yeah. Like I said, there are wild induction techniques like Daniel Love's Impossible Movement Practice or Dreamwalker or the Journey Technique, or there's a ton of Catch the Butterfly. That's actually one of my favorite ones personally. Those are different wild induction techniques, but they all do the same thing. Essentially, they just help you maintain awareness. They're just different variations of doing that. So, and like mild, for example, mnemonic induction of lucid dreams or whatever, that's a dialed induction technique. Wrong hand. Yeah, that's a dialed induction technique. So, yeah. So depending on the wild technique you use, it could be beginner friendly, but it varies between person to person. So yeah, it really depends on whether it is beginner friendly or not. It might not be for everybody. It depends on how good you are at maintaining awareness and focusing on your focal point that helps you maintain awareness essentially. And of course it is something you could practice and that sort of thing. And it's not guaranteed for everybody, so it could be beginner friendly depending on the person and kind of what they're doing, those things. So anyway, let's continue.
there's a chance I'm mentioning this right now just because there's a lot to it, and I think it's a good time. Plus, There are people who actually get it on their first try as well. And
At least I've heard this. I'm not 100% sure if that's certain, but I have heard of this, and it's mostly beginner's luck when that happens, I think. Or else they do just happen to do it right and are able to continue doing so. But it depends on the person, and I wouldn't count on it if I were you if you're first trying this, but try anyway if you want to.
and how would you like to have that possibility of getting it on the first try? So I may not talk about it in the best way I could, just because I've never really had much success with that, but
I'm kind of giving a red flag right there. I hadn't had much success myself at the time, so sign that you should take me with a grain of salt. I did put that disclaimer out there, so at least I had that going.
there's mistakes I've been making. I've been doing some research, and the research kind of shows what I should be doing instead. So I'll kind of mention that a little bit.
And it's false research, it's misinformation. We'll get into that.
But I'm going to try to explain it as I understand it. Okay?
Yes, very important point right there. I gave that disclaimer. This is the way I understand it, which of course was very wrong, as I'm indicating now. So, yeah.
So,
Also, what I'm reacting probably isn't going to be perfect either, just because there is so much and I probably don't know everything yet, but certainly a lot better than what this recording did. So, yeah.
wake-induced lucid dreaming. So,
Initiated.
the reason why this method would be ideal is because it's probably
And again, it's not a method, it's a type of lucid dream. And there's techniques to induce or initiate that type of lucid dream. Because a dream will happen regardless, it's where lucidity comes into play. You're not inducing the lucid dream, you're letting the dreaming occur and then having awareness right there. So you're not inducing the dream at all. Your lucidity initiates within the dream in some way. So there are techniques for inducing whatever, but the lucidity gets initiated and the dreaming process is out of our control. So yeah, we're not really inducing a dream in any way, or a lucid dream in any way. We're just kind of regaining or maintaining awareness. That's what, yeah, dials are essentially regaining awareness. Wiles are maintaining awareness. That's essentially the two different ways lucidity can happen as far as we're concerned. And those terms only exist to differentiate them. So, yeah.
one of the most reliable immediate methods. Now, of course, the method itself,
I mean, yes, that it does tend to be pretty reliable when the dream is forming and stuff. But of course, just like any type of dream, this can also fail, which it often does for me. Like, usually because I'm too tired and then I accidentally fall asleep, my consciousness dissolves. And yeah, but assuming that I don't make that mistake, then it does tend to be fairly reliable for me anyway. So if you make a mistake during the process, then that's where it can be unreliable. And there's other factors that could happen too, like timing with the REM period. Like, if we can't make REM happen, we just have to try to maintain awareness until it naturally happens. So yeah, those are little variables that could throw it off. So it tends to be reliable, but mistakes like what I mentioned could make it so that it doesn't work. So yeah, there's so many different variables. Like, even personal biology or psychology could factor that, but usually it's how the attempt itself goes. Like, if you fail to maintain awareness, well, then it didn't work. I think I made my point.
can take a while, but
And again, it takes a while. It depends on like when the REM period naturally occurs, and how long it takes usually depends on that. And kind of have to maintain a balance between maintaining awareness, of course, which I tend to fail at, and also still being able to fall asleep into a dream. We have to kind of balance the tightrope, so to speak, so that we can allow it to occur, but also maintain awareness. So, what was my original point? I'm gonna rewind this a little bit.
Most reliable immediate methods. Now, of course,
If it's done right, yeah, it should be, but that's not guaranteed.
the method itself can take a while, but
Oh, then yeah, it could take a while depending on the timing. Because with wilds, timing is pretty much what determines what makes or breaks it, assuming that the balance is properly maintained. Timing is something that's not really under our control, so yeah.
with a lot of the other methods, you just have to hope that it's successful. Whereas with this one, if
Again, same with the other methods, it's technically the same thing. It's why is my battery percentage going down rather than up? I'm gonna have to look into that. Very strange. Anyway, yeah, let's continue. So yeah, dials. With dials and wilds, it is hit and miss with either kind. So I wouldn't really favor one over the other. As Daniel Love says, it's all about being opportunistic. If you find yourself waking up, then it's a good chance to go for a while, but by having overall practices, then that can help you get it dialed. So yeah.
you follow through, it will be successful immediately. By immediately, I mean as soon as you fall asleep.
As soon as REM happens, you can fall asleep without REM happening. And I mean, of course, you can technically dream in non-REM, but as soon as as soon as REM occurs and the factors allow it to, that's usually when it would occur and what allows it to.
You'll notice immediate effects and stuff and get immediate success. So,
when the timing happens, then you don't make mistakes like I did.
yeah, this is probably one of the most reliable way to do it, but again, it's not exactly for beginners because you have to hold still for a long period of time.
Now that's false. You do not have to hold still. You probably know that this happens with normal dreaming too. If you're in the right place and time and stuff, you could toss and turn and then suddenly fall asleep within like 10 seconds if you do it just right. That can happen, so you do not have to lie still in order for that to happen. That's a common piece of misinformation right there. Everything will just fall into place eventually. Do not worry about lying still. If you have to itch yourself, just itch yourself. The act of lying still can build up tension and cause all these problems that can be prevented just by not trying to lie still. So do not worry about it. It won't affect anything. Lying still could actually make it worse for the reasons I mentioned.
So, I'll try to explain the steps if I can, and then I'll review it if I elaborate on it, because that's what I do with everything, it seems like, so I apologize about that.
Same here.
But, from my understanding, the first step is to, of course, lay down, and
I was basing this off a How to Lucid guide, which is very much false. It's written as if wild is a technique, which it's not. I would recommend either watching Daniel's video or going to the lucidguide.com and looking up wild techniques like the Impossible Movement Practice, Dreamwalker. I think he's got the Journey technique and those sort of things on there. You want to do wild, just look up what those are and figure out which one might suit you best. You choose which one you want to do if you're going to attempt anything in the first place. So these steps, ignore all these steps that I'm saying in this recording. There's techniques to induce a wild. Go based on those rather than these false steps that I'm going to say. So I'm going to confirm if anything would happen to be correct, but assume everything I'm saying as far as the steps go in this recording is incorrect until I say otherwise. But of course, pretty much take what I say as a grain of salt in general, because this is a topic that we're essentially pioneering and we don't know that much about it. There's variations between different people, and Yeah, it depends on people's biology, psychology, and the timing that things happen in. That all varies, and those are variables that are usually out of one's control. Psychological things can change slightly, but everything else is pretty much out of our control. So, anyway, my point with that is pretty much take everything you hear about this with a grain of salt and experiment for yourself and see what you notice about your own attempts and stuff. Take note of those things and kind of go based on that. In fact, I swear I would have better luck with lucid dreaming if I didn't even research it in the first place and purely did self exploration. So, yeah, experiment for yourself rather than listening to other information and taking it at face value. So, all these steps I say, assume they're wrong until I confirm, "Well, I mean, this could be helpful," or anything like that, which probably won't even happen because I don't remember the steps, but I'll probably be shaking my head when they're wrong and face palming most likely because it's embarrassing that I just blindly relayed this assuming it was correct. So, yeah, like I said, go with wild techniques like the impossible movement practice or dream walker or whatever wild induction techniques. Follow those steps rather than these ones. Like these ones assume wild are the technique. Those ones do not. All the other ones, they're just techniques to help you maintain awareness and have a point of focus and stuff. So anyway, let's listen to this because we're only 2 minutes into this, and yeah, I think we should hopefully cruise through here coming up here because I'm actually covering the main points that are wrong, and hopefully by listening to that you'll be able to identify the mistakes I made in this recording too, because I actually covered most of the incorrect information at this point. There's probably a couple things I haven't yet, but this is most of it, so we will probably be playing most of the way through since we covered a lot of it. Anyway, let's actually do that now.
I'm just going to go over the steps and I'll talk about when to do it and stuff like that. I don't know if that's the best way to talk about it, but that's what I'm going to do because that's what I feel like right now. This is very impromptu, just so you know, but yeah, so I think the first step is to lay down and get comfortable.
That's
and
not bad.
You can either lay on your back or your side.
That's true.
I personally lay on my side.
Lay it however you want. In fact, I would prefer you didn't even put a whole lot of thought into it.
I've tried it on my back, but it just doesn't really work.
Now that's for me, and I should have specified that. You do what works for you.
For me, but you could try.
Without laying down, it's not going to happen, so technically that's not wrong.
Either way, if you are comfortable laying on your side, maybe just do that. Now, what you want to do is relax all of your body parts one at a time, starting.
You can, but it's technically not necessary. I usually don't. I find myself already naturally relaxing just by not trying to lie still and stuff. Everything will just fall into place regarding that usually. So again, just follow the steps on like how to do the impossible movement practice. Don't really base a lot of stuff on this, because again, it'll be different for everybody.
From your feet onwards, and do everything individually. Like you do your feet, then your legs, and then your abdomen, and stuff in between actually, and
not necessary, but you can.
Your jaws, and I guess your jaws are we pay attention to more or less because
only when lying still.
That can actually.
If you're lying still, it could potentially become a problem, but like I said, you don't have to, so don't even worry about those things, honestly.
You have quite a lot of tension without you even realizing it, just because it naturally does.
Oh, no, I'm going to get into this later.
And you want to relax all those body parts, and you don't want to move a thing. Like, you want to be comfortable enough so you can stay completely still with very little issues. And yeah, so relax all your body parts one at a time and stuff. And then eventually you want to, I think you do this for about, I want to say 5 to 15 minutes or something like that. It might be longer, maybe even shorter. That really depends on who you are and how tired you are and stuff.
Depends on when REM occurs. It's usually we target REM, so yeah, it depends on when dreaming starts, technically, I should say. So how tired you are could affect it, but there are other things too, like whether you go into non-REM or REM, or there's all these different things. So essentially just if you're able to time it close to REM, that's the ideal scenario. If REM is around the corner, it'll just take a couple minutes then, or whenever REM occurs. So right there, it's all about timing, not necessarily what you're doing as much as timing usually. So keep that in mind.
And so when you do that, then you lay down for a while and
yeah, like I said, it is timing. So if you do it at the beginning of the night, you're probably going to have a bunch of non-REM before you start dreaming. So doing it at the beginning of the night is not a great idea. But if you're close, if REM is around the corner, that is usually the best time to do it. So like if you wake up from a dream and you know it's going to be an hour, usually about an hour before you wake up, then you can kind of time things according to that. And again, that's out of one's control, but you can kind of estimate the timing and go based on that, and know that there are factors that can affect that. So if it doesn't work, it might not necessarily be something you did, it might just be the timing. So yeah,
take deep breaths and stay completely
you can,
still.
but you don't have to. I don't.
And then you kind of want to focus on something called hypnagogic imagery, where
again, you can focus on whatever focal point you want. You don't have to focus on hypnagogia. That could be a focus point, but with like the impossible movement practice, for example, an impossible movement is typically what focus would be on. Or with Dreamwalker, there's typically a visualization that you do. That's your focal point. So find some focal point. That's what the step really should be.
you're actually gonna possibly start seeing shapes and patterns and things like that if you just like lay down. And if you're
like I said, take all these steps with a grain of salt, but stuff like that could happen. But usually you'll see stuff as a dream forms, and that's the dream forming. Usually there could be some hypnagogia prior to that, but if you don't see stuff, that's pretty normal as well. Sometimes even when the dream forms, I don't see anything until the entire dream is there. It really depends. There's so many factors that determine that. So this could happen. It's normal if it does. It's also normal if it doesn't. So
completely relaxed like that,
again, just focus on your focal point, and then usually the focal point will not only help you maintain awareness, but it should also help with the transition in some way, or else there's some way to tell whether you transition into a dream or not. So yeah, just focus on the focal point once again.
Now, the important thing is you need to keep your mind awake.
That's true.
Like, you need to keep your mind awake longer than you keep your body awake, and I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, you relax and
mind awake.
Yeah,
true.
eventually you'll start seeing a bunch of shapes. And according to Stefan from How to Lucid, he actually
bad source.
He said that he sees like these glimpses or flashes, and they'll appear for a second, then they disappear, then they come back. And
again,
I guess
it varies between person to person.
But what you want to do is you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that it's there, but don't really, you want to kind of know that interact with it, because that can ruin the whole process and make you have to start all over again.
Not necessarily true. In fact, engaging with it is probably going to help, if anything, because I mean, of course, you don't want to like do crazy physical movements or anything like that, but just kind of engaging with the hypnagogy and focusing on it, and don't worry about any consequences of what you're doing. Like, if it's none of that should really matter. Don't worry about whether you're interacting with it too much or not. Just focus on it. Just pay attention to it, essentially. Like, for example, I had a wild experience where there was some pretty good music for auditory hypnagogia, and I was naturally rocking my head with it, even though I think I was physically rocking my head with it while the dream was forming. At least it felt like a physical effort, and that didn't cause me to wake up because I was immersed in what was going on. I was engaging with the music that was happening, essentially, and I didn't worry about the consequences that would cause, so it didn't cause any problems. If you're engaging with the process, it should work out just fine. So yeah, don't worry about how you're interacting with the process. Just do what feels right. It's probably the right thing.
So yeah, that can be a problem.
Let it flow, of course, but how you interact with it, just do what feels right and don't really put a whole lot of thought into it. Just do whatever without questioning it and experiment for yourself, of course.
So just lay down and then just let it drip past you. Know that it's there, but don't really do anything about it. Just
You could ignore that.
Just like watch it like you naturally would, and don't try to do anything about it, like I said. And
you can engage
eventually
with it if
what'll
you
happen
want.
is you're actually gonna enter sleep paralysis, and
No.
you don't want to freak out.
No, this is another one of those myths. So you could enter sleep paralysis, but it's nothing to worry about because it is part of the dream formation and it happens before we dream. It's perfectly normal whether it happens or not, but usually I think if you're immersed in a visualization, you won't even notice it. It happens regardless, but whether you notice it is a whole other question. So, like when I do Catch the Butterfly, for example, I tend to focus on the monkey mind to help me maintain awareness and stuff. So, in that case, I do notice sleep paralysis usually, but that's only because I'm only focusing on the monkey mind, so I can't help but notice it. But if I'm doing a visualization based technique, I'm going to be so immersed in the visualization that I probably won't notice it. So if you notice it, it's just part of the dream forming. That's all it is. Just let it occur if it happens. But if not, then, well, you'll find yourself in the dream without it. So yeah, you don't need sleep paralysis for that to happen, or at least you don't need to notice it. It just happens, so don't worry about it.
When you do this, because you'll actually wake yourself up, and I can promise you that none of it is real. And I know I haven't been able to succeed at wild before, but I've had sleep paralysis many times, and I'm telling you, it's not.
I said that I haven't succeeded at wilds, but if I've entered a dream through sleep paralysis, which I've done that plenty of times, technically I have had successful wilds then. So if you enter a lucid dream because of sleep paralysis, that's considered a wild because you went into a dream consciously, but it's not required, like I said. So all these myths that you hear about it, forget about it. It always happens, and it's just part of the dream that's forming. That's it. So yeah, go with the flow when it comes to that. So yeah.
Not that bad. If you see, if you have like, oh, these sleep paralysis demons, the only reason they happen is because you're afraid of them happening, and your fear is what drives.
Just like dreams, expectation is taking hold. So don't worry about whether it happens or not. Just I've never had it. I've had sleep paralysis well over 100 times throughout my life, and I've never had anything like that happen before. And I've had my eyes closed and stuff like that. So don't even notice them. All I notice is eventually the dream is there, dreams forming, and all that stuff that happens. It's just part of transitioning into the dream, so nothing to worry about. I've never had it myself, so yeah.
them. But if you
And if it happens, just take it as part of the experience and just focus on the dream that's forming. So that's all that matters.
don't have it, if you keep in mind that it's none of it is real and you're not going to get harmed or anything like that, then
If it does happen, keep those things in mind.
that should hopefully alleviate.
Which if don't expect it to, because there's no reason to believe it will. The dream is forming, and that's all that's happening.
Your fears, and if you alleviate your fears, then that should even alleviate those demons or whatever. I've never actually had any of those in my life as far as I can remember, but I just, yeah, no matter what, you want to stay completely still and don't get too excited and stuff like that. And
don't really worry about excitement, because I've actually found that there's been times, like when I was listening to that music, I was actually pretty excited, but I was also immersed in what was going on, that the excitement was just part of what was going on and it wasn't a problem. So don't worry about any of those things. Trying to suppress excitement might actually make things worse. Just allow it to occur however it wants to. Don't worry about it.
yeah, eventually the shapes will start becoming more and more distinct. I think you want to kind of, I think you can eventually try to do things with it, but don't become emotionally attached to it, if that makes sense.
Just don't worry about that. Engage with the process. Everything will be
want to
fine.
know
Don't
it's
worry
there,
about
but don't do things that could potentially affect your heart rate quite a bit. Just know it's
Don't
there,
worry
let it
about
drift
that.
past you or whatever, but
all those things are irrelevant details, and you can have an exciting dream. That's not a problem, right? Well, even during whiles of the dream is forming, that's pretty much the same as true. Just focus on what's going on and let it flow. Don't worry about those extra details. In fact, I've found I've gotten adrenaline rushes, and it's actually been the transition to the dream before rather than waking up. So yeah, not a problem.
or else you can visual, like if you see like a red square or something, try to visualize it being green, and that should make it green, but don't spend a lot of effort trying to visualize it. If it doesn't turn green, oh well. But do what you can to maintain awareness, because
That all that matters is that you maintain awareness. Whatever happens, just do whatever feels right. Is probably going to be correct.
yeah, and no matter what, you need to maintain awareness, because otherwise you'll fall asleep and then the method won't work. And
Yeah, that's true. When I say method, in this case, I really meant like a wild technique for inducing or initiating the wild itself, which itself is not a technique, but there's techniques to get you there, like I said. So maintaining awareness, that part is true.
and yeah, you want your sleep paralysis, and there's the chance that there might be pressure on you. That's just part of the process. Just let it happen. Don't move, and eventually you'll be in a dream. So
That does. Sometimes I will feel bodily distortions, like my body feels like it's warping or something, but that's just part of the transition to the dream. That's, I guess you could say, it's my dream body or my physical body translating into my dream body. So that's just part of the transition from going from the physical body to the dream body. Any of those bodily distortions is pretty much everything that happens is just part of the transition into the dream, and that's normal. We know that when a body part falls asleep, it can feel kind of weird in some situations. That's more or less what's happening with the transition, or what could happen. I did notice it today, but like, even though I did enter a dream, I didn't notice any of the weird distortions necessarily, but sometimes I do. It really depends. But again, that's all part of the natural process and completely normal.
So yeah, you just want to kind of visualize, or you just let that imagery happen. Maybe pay attention to it and stuff like that, but don't do anything drastic or anything with it. And
Everything can just
you'll
happen.
be in a dream, but you don't want to do anything right away. Once you're in there, you can just kind of visualize things, maybe like certain details changing, like try to change the color or something just by imagining that it's a different color, and of course keep your eyes open and stuff like that.
Don't worry about any of those things. I know one time when I had full visual hypnagogia, it felt like I was in the dream, but I could still feel my physical body. I just moved my legs gently, and that translated to me walking in the dream. Then all of a sudden, I couldn't feel my physical body anymore, just like that. So I kind of did that with ease, essentially. So just kind of ease all that until fully in the dream, and then just engage with what's there, really, like pay attention to it and become part of it in whatever way feels natural. Don't question whether this or that is natural. It probably is. Just go with it, whatever, and have fun.
But yeah, the hardest part is probably staying still, because
False. You don't even have to do that.
staying still is not that easy, but that's why it's important to get comfortable, which is going to make it a lot easier to stay still and stuff. That's why
Not
it might even help
necessary.
to get up and stretch and stuff like that.
It happens even with normal dreams. Like you can toss and turn and still go into a normal dream. Like sometimes you could toss and turn and all of a sudden 10 seconds later you start dreaming. That could very easily happen. It's really no different with wilds. It could very well be the same way. Like one time I was lying on my side and then I turned to my back, and about 10 seconds later, I started entering a dream consciously. I didn't even try to do a wild, but that happened completely by accident. So lying still is unnecessary. In fact, one time I was actually moving my body, but I was moving slightly, and for some reason the dream started forming even when I was moving a little bit. It's all where my focus was and all those things. So there's a ton of margin for those things, so don't worry about any of that. I can confirm with some of my personal experiences. I've even, yeah, like I said, I've moved slightly and I still entered the state regardless. So lying still, very false.
But um, so the so here's one of the things that happens with sleep paralysis that actually kind of fascinates me. So the idea of sleep paralysis is we want to keep our mind awake while our body falls asleep. And it's like, how do we do that? So yeah, you want to focus on like your breathing, and then if there's patterns and stuff, focus on it.
Just have a focal point, like a visualization or whatever a wild technique does. That's all you have to focus on.
But don't become emotionally attached to it and stuff like that. But let that stuff happen, and what's actually going to happen is there's a pretty good chance that as you're laying down, you're going to get an urge. You're going to get what's called a rollover signal or a rollover urge.
By not lying still, I actually don't get that. And even if it does happen, it's not even part of this at all. It just happened, just like we can itch or have the urge to toss and turn naturally. It's not part of this at all. This is false.
Where you get tempted to roll over, like especially if you're laying from your side, or also get tempted to move one of your body parts like your arm or leg, or you'll get an itch or something like that.
Those things could happen, but it's not part of this. Our body does not do any special signals to prep us for lucid dreaming or anything like that. But this is all natural. If you get an urge, like if you have an itch, just itch. And do whatever you need to get comfortable. Everything will just fall into place.
What's considered a rollover signal, and there's actually a reason behind this. So this is completely normal, by the way. The reason why this rollover signal,
that is normal, but it has nothing to do with this, and you can answer if that happens.
Signal happens is because generally when we go to sleep, our body doesn't want to fall asleep unless our mind is asleep. So what happens is your body's going to send a signal to your mind, I believe, and
false.
It'll send this urge, right? It'll send a very powerful urge to roll over or something like that. And the idea is if your mind is asleep, you're not going to respond to this urge, and therefore it's safe for your body to fall asleep. But if your mind is awake, you're naturally going to want to respond to that urge, right? So the body's like, oh, the mind's awake. It's not safe to do it yet, because your body doesn't want to fall asleep unless your mind is asleep. And so it does this rollover urge of the test to make sure it's safe for it to go to sleep.
False.
So, yeah, so when you do wild, you'll get this rollover signal very likely, and you want to ignore it. Yeah, you might have to wait even like 15 or 20 minutes possibly for this. You might have to deal with this urge for that long, and you want to stay completely still despite that. You want to ignore that urge, because if you ignore the urge, that'll trick your body into thinking that your mind is asleep when in reality it's awake. Because you...
Okay, I'll clarify what is most likely actually going on. So that's not really what's happening at all. The mind will drift slightly, which will allow us to get into the state of dream formation, or else it'll not be focused on something that prevents it from occurring. So like when I went on my back, I was actually thinking about my sleeping position and stuff, and yet I started entering a dream anyway. So what's really happening is a minor drift and then regaining it, most likely. That's usually what happens when I'm doing Catch the Butterfly. I get a minor drift, at least enough that the process can begin, but I might still be awake that entire time. Like one time I was thinking about doing a different wild technique, and as I was thinking about what other wild technique I could do, I started entering the dream right that moment, even though I was actively thinking about that. So that had to do with the timing, and essentially, even though I was thinking about it, I just wasn't interfering with the natural process somehow. So that's really what's going on. If you're not interfering with the natural process, it might be a slightly minor drift or something like that, and then regaining awareness, or else awareness is focused on a point that, if you're focused on a visualization, you're just naturally not going to interfere with the process that's occurring. So that's what's really going on. It's not some rollover signal thing. It's just you're happening to not interfere with the natural process. Like if I'm thinking about something, I could very easily go into the state if the timing is right. Because I'm thinking about this particular thing, I'm not directly interfering with the process. And yeah, that's what a lot of focal points are actually targeting. So yeah, essentially just doing it in a way that doesn't necessarily interfere with the process. And if you're very tired and your requirement for REM is high, then you could actually probably even go like this and still be able to enter the state of dream formation potentially. Can't guarantee that, but it could very well happen. So that shows that you don't have to lie completely still to do this. Everything will just fall into place.
Ignore this urge, right? So, fascinating, right? Your body actually intentionally...
It sounds logical, but it's not actually logical.
Makes itself itchy or tempted to roll over and stuff to see if you're asleep or not. This
funny
is
idea, but false.
Believe it or not.
This could go on the Onion news article or what, whatever fake news website, it's all fake, so it could easily go on something like that.
Like, it's not just some random itch that happens. Your body does this on purpose. Isn't that insane?
It's
But
not
yeah, that's
true.
how it tests if you're awake or not, because your body doesn't want you to go through sleep paralysis unless the mind is asleep, because normally, at least most people won't experience that process of sleep paralysis, or they won't remember it because their mind was probably asleep before it started and stuff, right?
That's probably true.
So,
Or is in a state where it wasn't interfering with the natural process, or focused on something rather. And we don't know this, so we don't know this stuff for certain. We just have to kind of experiment for ourselves, like I said.
yeah, that's the whole idea. So yeah, when you do wild, you wanna just lay down, relax all your body parts one at a time, and then
Just allow things to fall into place with whatever feels natural. It'll just happen. Kind of like falling asleep. It just kind of happens after a while.
take consistent deep breaths. I mean, you don't want to do it too fast or too slow.
I mean, breathing could be a focal point, but I have not been doing that, and it could potentially interfere with the process too. So I just don't recommend having breathing as a focal point. Not that it can't, but it's absolutely not necessary. Most wild techniques don't involve this, so do what those techniques involve.
Obviously, but you want to do it where it's still comfortable to do it. And then, yeah, eventually you'll get this rollover urge, and you want to ignore it the best you can. And then your body will then start sleep paralysis. And
Yeah, think about it this way. If you're very tired, then you're gonna be pulled towards sleepiness, right? You can move, and if your tiredness wins over that movement, it's still gonna happen, right? But after time passes, sleepiness or sleep can happen after time passes too. So it's just kind of bound to happen. It just happens on its own. Just let everything fall into place, as I keep saying over and over again.
your mind will be aware as this is happening. Your body will probably vibrate. Like I said, there's these needles you can get, and obviously those needles can feel like they hurt. But then you can also get the same thing, but without the pokey needles. Like if a body part falls asleep or whatever. Well, during sleep paralysis, your body will actually do the whole thing. Yeah, your body.
That's not even guaranteed. It could happen, but it's just, again, it's part of the transition into the dream, and it's only how we're perceiving it technically. But anyway, that's technically irrelevant, but it is normal if it does happen.
Body will actually do the one that doesn't have the needles, the vibrations or whatever, throughout your entire body. And believe me, to me it feels incredible. I don't know about you, but I think it feels incredible. This is why I believe sleep paralysis is an incredible experience. It's not
I
only
do
that,
believe
but
that.
you can visualize something. You'll all of a sudden see it. You can
Not guaranteed,
like
but
visualize a sound.
that's not guaranteed, but it is a state where it could happen.
And you'll start hearing it, like a really good song, for example.
I do tend to hear some pretty good songs sometimes during dream formation, and I actually find that when I visualize something, I will often get hypnagogia or some form of hallucination while this is happening, but oftentimes it doesn't even go with what I was originally visualizing, but the act of visualizing can make stuff happen sometimes for me. So yeah, it's all of it's normal, so don't worry about any of it.
And so yeah, where am I getting at? So yeah, you completely relax, and yeah, eventually you'll get the rollover signal. You want to ignore this, and then to keep your mind awake, you try to focus on the patterns and stuff like that. Don't become emotionally attached to it, but focus on those patterns so your mind doesn't fall asleep.
just focus on whatever the focal point is for the wild technique you're performing to initiate the wild.
And you don't want to overdo this because otherwise you won't fall asleep at all. Or
That's
you'll
technically true.
somehow slip into a dream, is what it's called, where you think you're still awake trying to fall asleep when in reality you're dreaming about being asleep in the.
If you're performing good wild techniques, these things most likely won't happen. And there is, of course, such thing as overdoing it, but if you do what feels natural, that's probably not going to happen.
Same sleep position as you are in real life. So you think you're falling asleep when in reality you probably slipped into a dream without even realizing it about being in your bed sleeping.
I have had that happen, but if I was focusing on a visualization technique, that's not going to happen. So yeah, there was one time when I was pretty sure I was still trying to fall asleep, but I decided to get up because I thought about the possibility that I could have slipped into a dream, and sure enough, I got up within the dream itself. So yeah, I was in a dream for who knows how long, sleeping essentially. But like I said, if you're focused on a wild technique, that shouldn't happen, because stuff will correlate with the technique usually. So yeah, oftentimes whatever you're visualizing, the dream will often correlate with that. So yeah, anyway, focus on whatever is part of the technique.
And that's what can happen if you try too hard, which is, I'm kind of a victim of that. That's how I know about it, because I looked it up, and that's kind of what happens. Mix that plus my experience, and that's, yeah. So
don't worry about it.
Don't try too hard for this, but you kind of want to do this semi so that you can keep your mind awake. And of course, if you mess up, don't focus too hard on.
Just focus on the focal point.
Yeah, don't really worry about anything too much, just because if your body is, or yeah, because your timing and whatever. Yeah. Anyways, let me think. What was I gonna say? So yeah, don't worry about that happening. Just kind of deal with it. What am I saying?
Don't worry about it. As I said, that is true.
Yeah, so ignore the rollover urge and try to keep your mind awake by focusing on these shapes and stuff. And you can actually, if you focus on these shapes, you can actually change them just by visualizing it very briefly and stuff.
You could, but I usually just focus on whatever's going on, and it kind of has its own flow and goes in its own direction. Usually I just focus on it as it is usually.
So
as that would happen even when I'm unconscious. So yeah, I just kind of focus on what's naturally there and let it flow.
Yeah, so anyways, ignore the rollover urge and yeah, try to fall asleep and stuff, right? So
allow things to occur essentially with your technique.
See, what am I getting at? There's a couple things I was going to say about the wild method, but I can't think of them right now.
Not a method or technique.
Yeah, it can take a long time, and meditation will really help. I'll talk about meditation sometime. Sorry, I'm not doing it right now, but
meditation could help just because of your ability to focus, but I don't really meditate a whole lot, and if I am able to focus, it should still work just fine. It's not required, but it can help with focus, so if you're struggling with it, it might be worth investing in it.
Meditation will, if you meditate, you could just, a basic meditation would just be to sit for about 10 minutes, set a timer for 10 minutes, and
do it however
you want. What I actually like
really
to do now is like, I just close my eyes, get in that meditation position that you always see, and focus on your breathing. And by that I mean, like, don't.
That's a type of meditation. You can choose what type of meditation you want to do, of course, but I don't do that these days. I usually just kind of work through what my mind is thinking about. But it varies between person to person. You do the meditation that suits you best if you're doing any at all.
Don't breathe in or out. Just do it when it would naturally do it, but kind of pay attention to it. And every time it happens, count. So, goes in 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, exhale 4,
Do what
up
you
to
want.
10. And then when you get past 10, start over, because otherwise, if you get to too high of a number, it'll be really hard to keep track of, and that can be kind of distracting. And in order to make it not distracting, you just repeat 1 through 10, and that should help with meditation and stuff, right?
Do what you want for the meditation.
So that's a basic
Look into
meditation
it
to
if
get
you
started
want.
with, and it can help you lucid dream just because it'll naturally help you maintain your awareness. And if you're stressed out in life, it can help with that a little bit. And if you want to be seeing results, you gotta do that every day pretty much, or every couple days at least. But if you only do it every once in a while, you're not really gonna see much.
Okay, so it could help with awareness maybe and mindfulness, but usually the thing that causes me to become lucid isn't necessarily mindfulness as much as recognizing dream signs during dials. Now that's with dials, and meditation will probably help with wilds more, but it could help in general, like with mindfulness. And like I said, anytime I'm almost never mindful of my dreams. The only time that I think it could be a dream is a particular type of event occurring. There's plenty of them that would only happen in a dream, or plenty of dream signs. Those are usually the things that get me lucid, not necessarily mindfulness, because mindfulness almost never happens in a dream. So yeah, you don't want to put all your energy towards mindfulness and waking light, because it rarely happens in dreams. But oh, I should probably be careful how I word this, but like I said, mindfulness usually doesn't happen in dreams, so that's not where my focus is regarding that. But that's actually kind of irrelevant to this, so take what I just said with a grain of salt.
An effect. It's kind of a thing that takes place over time. So if you don't see success right away, know that you are on the right track by doing it. Eventually, you should. So
Do your own research on the meditation side of things. I'm no expert when it comes to that. I'm kind of a hypocrite because I hardly do it myself, so I'm not a source you should be listening to regarding meditation, that's for sure.
yeah, so you don't need to do that, but it helps. So
That might be true.
yeah,
It helps, maybe.
it's and actually doing that wild thing for a while in a way is kind of meditating, by the way. So if you do
I
this, you'll
consider it
actually
that.
receive the benefits of meditation.
Yeah, like I said, I personally sometimes do catch the butterfly, where I focus on my monkey mind to maintain awareness where my thoughts naturally go. And then I try to reel myself back if my awareness drifts and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that you should do it yourself for that reason, but that is one thing that I have found success on before. And because I'm going through my thoughts, and that's what I do during meditation these days, in a way I am meditating until I'm dreaming, in a way, but it could be considered that, but that's kind of a subjective thing, so keep that in mind.
So even if you accidentally fall asleep with this wild, because your mind accidentally fell asleep, and then all of a sudden you're in a dream or whatever, because you ignore the rollover signal because your mind was asleep and stuff. But if you do accidentally fall asleep, you will still kind of get the benefits of meditation, because that's kind of what you were doing for a while. Because you're kind of focusing on nothingness until you enter sleep paralysis, or what I call the black void.
Mm.
And I'll talk more detail about sleep paralysis later, but I'm telling you right now, it's not something to be scared of. And I actually get really amazing experiences with them. Because, yeah, those vibrational sensations, and yeah,
When I say vibrational sensations, I'm talking about the bodily distortions that can happen, at least for me, and what a lot of other people do seem to report. That's just like one of the sensations, and I personally like those sensations, so yeah, that's kind of what I mean by that.
some reason you're scared, just stay completely still and focus on those vibrational sensations and try to enjoy them. That's
Again, just focus and or engage with the experience, let it flow, and yeah.
the best advice I can give right now, because that's what I do. I don't know if it instantly translates into your situation, but I'm
That's a
going to
fair
tell you
point.
that just in case you end up in that situation. Try that. Maybe it will, hopefully. But, yeah, so in order to get that sleep paralysis, you have to ignore the rollover urge. And then you successfully completed wild, basically. If you're
Again, you don't have to do sleep paralysis. In fact, with most visualization techniques, you probably won't even notice it. That's irrelevant to the technique. If your awareness is maintained into the dream, that's all that matters.
in a dream. So, yeah, you eventually you don't really want to do super advanced things in a dream right away. You just kind of want to let the dream develop for a while because you're in a volatile state, which
Just engage with
means
it.
that any little
Just engage your senses with it, and you don't have to get too crazy with it. Just do what feels right regarding that. And you'll know when you're like fully in the dream and everything feels like real and physical and everything in the dream world.
thing could cause you to accidentally wake up. You're
Don't
in the
worry
middle
about
ground
that.
between consciousnesses, or consciousness, whatever, and when you're in that middle ground, you could accidentally slip from one to the other very, very easily.
You could do that at one time. You could do that at any time, regardless. It could happen in a dream, or it doesn't matter. The principle is usually the same. Engage with what's going on.
And you can become exceedingly efficient at it.
Okay, that was kind of a Matrix reference right there. If you've seen the Matrix, I think you know what I'm talking about.
So, yeah, so if you get that hypnagogic imagery, like I said, you want to try to focus on it, but don't become emotionally attached to it. And I keep on repeating myself, but that's because I'm not very good at explaining this method. Every time I do that, I keep on thinking of something new, literally every single time, which is kind of why I'm doing that. So yeah, hypnagogic imagery, and yeah, it could take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour or more. And that depends on how tired you are, and
Depends on the timing, really, more than anything else, usually. That's most of the time, that's a factor that's out of one's control, but you can sort of try to time it nicely, but the timing kind of dictates everything, though.
your normal routines and stuff like that. That determines how tired you are. So it really depends on how tired you are. Let's see, I was gonna say
That can be a factor, but timing more so.
something else really. Oh yeah, now the time of day to do it, you can do it during the night, but it's probably going to take longer than average because you're just getting into your first sleep cycle. I'll actually start talking about the different sleep cycles and sleep stages in a second because
Probably had
having an
that.
understanding of
I'm sure I had that wrong too. I'm not even gonna react to that part. But this one is pretty prevalent, so that's why I'm reacting to this, though.
that can kind of make that more acceptable, because if you do wild and stuff, you'll, like, I notice that even if I do wild for a really long time, I'll find myself suddenly start to grow impatient or something, or else I'll be too tired that I accidentally fall asleep. And
That too tired is definitely what happens to me these days. But Yeah, if you're focusing on the focal point, it really shouldn't matter a whole lot. After a while, you just kind of learn to not care, especially with the results you can get from it.
Yeah, but
This is kind of a horrible analogy, but I think of giving birth, we know how painful that can be, but after a while, we just kind of forget about it, especially when we see the result. That's kind of how it can be for this too. It's a pain to go through this, but then once we get a decent result, then it's practically forget about it. I know I've gone sometimes a while takes a while, but then when I have a pretty decent length lucid dream, sometimes I completely forget about the process of getting there. 'Cause it doesn't matter anymore. All of a sudden, it's worth it. You forget about the initial experience, and if you've been doing it for a while, that's usually how it ends up going. So yeah.
what was I just saying? I forgot. Oh, the time of day. But yeah, so during the first sleep cycle might work, but it's got a lot less success. And a lot of people who give up on wild give up because they're not having success doing it right away. Probably.
Like I said, most of the mistakes are probably just because of the timing.
And what a way to get better success would be to do it during the night. I mean, not during the night, but early in the morning when you've already had some sleep. Like I said, you have a really good balance of melatonin and serotonin. So,
I mean, that might be true. I don't know that for certain, but it's the timing, like I said, of the cycle and all that. You're a lot closer to your cycle, most likely, and it'll probably be longer and all the desirable things that we want for a lucid dream or a dream.
because of that good balance, you'll be able to fairly quickly fall asleep, but the serotonin that you built up will also help you get a bunch of dreams and stuff too, right? And that's why it's going to be a lot quicker in the morning. So probably do it in the morning. That's the only time I ever do it. I've even tried astral projection a couple times during the night, and I think I achieved the vibrational state, but only for about 10 seconds, and then I woke up. Possibly because I got a little bit excited. I'm not sure.
Astral projection is most likely false. I would watch Daniel Love's channel to learn about that, but it's most likely a dream without the knowledge of it being a dream. A lot of techniques are very similar to wild techniques, and we know with dreams, expectations a huge role, and dreams can very easily emulate the concept. That's more likely what's going on. It can emulate the experience and stuff, so it's most likely a lucid dream without the knowledge. So astral projection, at least based on the evidence we have, is likely not true. So, yeah, it's most likely just a wild but slightly misinterpreted as that rather than a dream.
So, yeah, anyways, what am I saying about the time of day? So, yeah, I would recommend starting out early in the morning just because you're more likely to have success that way. But
It's the
you can do
timing.
it during the night, or you can do it during a nap too. Because if you're really tired during a nap, yeah, keeping your mind awake might be kind of hard. But because of this, you're actually going to be able to achieve it fairly quickly. So it's kind of a compromise.
I've had some during naps, had some dials during naps, and I've been taking some morning naps recently. Um, and once again, that comes down to timing. So, yeah.
With how tired you are compared to how long it's going to take. And being more tired will help, but you're more likely to accidentally fall asleep, even though it's going to
Again,
probably
timing.
happen quicker.
timing with the dreaming period, which we don't have any control over.
So, yeah, so I'd recommend doing it early in the morning or during a nap, I guess. I've never done it during a nap, but if you have a bunch of time to sleep for a nap and stuff, maybe do it then. So,
I've done it recently though.
yeah, I definitely.
And actually, during a nap, it's more likely to be a DIO where I wake up and go back to sleep. I've never actually done it where I maintain awareness. It's always been I wake up and then I immediately start dreaming again. That happens to me quite a bit during naps sometimes. I suppose it's because it's not part of my normal sleep cycle, and when I get a chance to have more REM, my body is going to take it most likely. So that's why I'm able to go back in during that. So any while I've done during a nap is because of already dreaming and then re-entering after waking up. But yeah, I think maintaining awareness, that could probably just as easily happen.
This isn't exactly a beginner method, but.
And again, it's the timing and the requirement for realm and all these factors that aren't directly under our control.
But I would recommend trying it because some people have success on their first try. I would actually recommend watching some videos on YouTube, like How to Lucid's most recent one, because that'll have a bunch of useful information on it.
Lucid Dream Portal actually made one. I'll try to pull it up here. Oh, video page. Let me see. There it is. I would recommend. This is a really good wild tutorial. I highly recommend this. You'll notice it's very different from pretty much all the other ones you see on there. And even this DIO one too. So I would check those out. So yeah, anyway.
And yeah, another thing I was gonna say about that, I feel like I'm gonna forget one little thing, but the next thing I was thinking of is, of course, a couple mistakes that I make regarding that and why I fail. I just thought of another thing I was gonna say, so I'll say that thing first. So yeah, when I do this, I'll either try too hard. I'll try too hard possibly and slip into a dream, even though I think I'm trying to fall asleep yet. Where I'm spending like hours just laying there doing nothing because I can't fall asleep, and that's because I'm trying too hard. So don't try too hard, and if you fail, just kind of accept that and improve next time. Yeah, the very first ones probably won't be very rewarding, but yeah, again, you have that chance of getting it, and some people do it.
Yeah, I just watched that Lucid Dream Portal's wild guides. That'll have better information for sure.
Right away on the first time, so kudos to those people. So
Probably just beginners.
I've done it many times and I still haven't succeeded yet. That's
with trying to fall asleep consciously. I had plenty of de-IELTS during this time, though. That's why I was like, I've had sleep paralysis plenty of times. That's because of de-IELTS. And yeah, that is bound to happen with de-IELTS, but again, it's just part of the dream formation, as I said over and over again earlier.
I'm making one little mistake that's holding me back, and I'll talk about the ones I've made so far. Like, I've made several repeated ones without even learning about what I did. It just didn't work, but for a while I didn't know what I actually did to cause that to not work. But yeah, so maybe watch some of those videos for more details, but some
Not
people
those.
could yeah, you could accidentally stay awake for too long, but you could also fall asleep too. And
Most likely the timing.
I'd probably rather have you accidentally fall asleep than overdo it, just because you might
I
have
agree.
some dreams, and you'll get more sleep, of course, that way too. Plus, even if you do a wild and you fail, you're actually more likely to have a dial than.
That is still true. Daniel even recommend when you get the opportunity to do a wild, try to do a wild, and if you miss, you'll likely land in a dial. That's why he's like, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land in a star or something like that. That's kind of how it is with this. Wild's like the moon, and dial's sort of a star. So, yeah.
So yeah, even if your wild fails, you'll actually very likely realize you're dreaming and remember that you were trying that possibly. So don't think it's a complete waste if you accidentally fall asleep, because it actually does increase your chances of having an accidental lucid dream even from that.
Most
So
likely.
don't think it's a waste. Plus, because of you sitting there doing nothing and stuff, you've effectively meditated as well. So you're going to feel really good from that meditation. You'll feel like you have good well-being in terms of
That could happen.
what you get from meditation and stuff, because you got it from that. So yeah, so don't think it's a complete waste if you fail, because there are still benefits you'll get despite that. So that's why I encourage you to keep trying. That's why I keep trying, because I do get those benefits even if I fail. So I'll let you know if I succeed and how it was, of course, because every little thing you do, it seems like matters, at least as of right now for me. From my perspective, it seems like all that stuff matters. So if I succeed, I'll try to mention all those things, because I'm sure it's going to be profound and stuff like that. By the way, another thing about wild is it's probably going to cause you to have some of your vividest dreams. So
It's all about your memory of the dreams more than anything. The dreams probably were vivid, but if your memory of them isn't good, then it won't really feel vivid. And you're just bound to have more awareness with wild, so that's most likely what's going on there.
yeah, I definitely recommend that. So let me think, what else? Was it time of day? Oh yeah, mistakes. Another problem I'm really having trouble with is the swallow reflex.
That's another example of one of those surge. If you have to swallow, swallow.
That's like the thing that's like swallow reflex. I'm about to end this man's whole career. That's kind of what it seems like when I'm trying to do
Nothing have
wild.
to
The
be.
swallow reflex is the thing that prevents me from being able to do it, it seems like. So I can't fully give you advice on that. Your sleeping position could actually affect that, but
Don't worry about it.
um try to swallow less and less each time if it happens to you. And by the
Just
way, if
don't
you
worry.
don't swallow it, your mouth will and you keep your tongue still and stuff, your mouth will eventually feel sort of dry in a way, and you won't really have the urge to swallow as much, because when
It'll probably happen sooner, actually. That, what I just said, will probably happen sooner if you just don't worry about it. Do what it needs to do.
you wake up, you'll notice your mouth is kind of dry. That's simply because you did actually have saliva in there, but nothing was really happening. You weren't really swallowing that much. You were just mainly breathing, so your mouth will be dry and stuff. But if you just sit there and don't move anything in your mouth, it should eventually dry out like that, which should hopefully remove the urge to swallow. I think that's kind of what I noticed with me. I haven't really done it enough to know for sure if that's what it is, but
Don't worry about it.
I actually kind of put my tongue in a position where I have it resting on the bottom of my mouth, and then I put the very tip of it maybe in
I don't
between
think
my
about
teeth. I'm
that.
not sure.
I don't think about that these days. It's irrelevant.
Or up against my teeth wall on the inside, and then I try not to swallow. But it really helps with the urges, I would say. And I also notice another thing that kind of helps is it's mostly the urge. So what I actually do instead of swallowing usually is You know the gag reflex that you make where you make the motion without actually swallowing? Nothing actually goes through. I just did that. Um, if you have the urge to swallow, maybe do that instead of actually swallowing, just because it'll make your mouth dry a little bit faster, thus removing the urge to swallow and stuff.
Don't worry about it.
I think another thing that really screws me up in terms of the urge to swallow is if I have to blow my nose or something, because if my nose is a little bit congested, that definitely triggers the gag reflex or whatever you call it. And that can definitely ruin that. By the way, if you swallow and make it subtle and kind of natural, I know that's easier said than done, but if you do that, that won't really affect your results, by the way. You'll still keep going into it as long as you keep it natural, if that makes sense.
Doesn't matter.
So,
that line's still
I would
good.
recommend... Yeah, try to put your tongue in that one position. By the way, my mouth is a little bit dry right now, so I haven't really been swallowing too much while doing this. But I just did it. Oh no. But yeah, try not to think about it too much. Thinking about it alone can trigger it. So
Again,
if you
don't
think
worry
about
about
it,
it. That
maybe
helps.
do that gag reflex thing. I don't know. But keep it subtle, which should help with the urge and stuff like that. So, swallowing problem is probably one of my biggest holdbacks, possibly. I actually did notice, however, that if I'm really tired, like, for example, I'm very tired right now because I'm, of course, behind on sleep. Like I said, I usually am. I'm going to catch up this weekend because I have days off and stuff. But, when I'm really tired, even if I think about swallowing, I'm too tired to even bother doing it in the first place. So, if you could make yourself tired, maybe, then swallowing might naturally not even be a problem in the first place. By the way,
Don't worry about it. It is what it is.
if you spit, sure, that'll clear your mouth and stuff, but that can make the stuff come back anyways. More stuff come back, so I don't really think it's worth doing that. I've tried this before. I even had a water bottle next to my bed just for spitting into. And yeah, so I didn't have to get up to do that. But like I said, I have that one problem with swallowing and stuff. So yeah, my best advice I could give you about the swallowing issue is do that tongue position and do a gag reflex if you have the urge. That way your mouth can still dry. And then that should remove the urge over time. And yeah, and relaxing and possibly having to swallow and stuff like that is the worst in my opinion, because possibly having to swallow, then you just think about it and all of a sudden the urge is there just by thinking about it.
Don't worry about it.
Sucks.
Do whatever.
I don't fully know what to tell you about that, but those are things that I found can at least alleviate it. Maybe I just need to practice doing that a bunch and all of a sudden I'll be a master at it, maybe. Because I don't practice that too much, but...
No such thing.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm behind on sleep, then I don't even notice myself swallowing at all. My mouth is just naturally dry the way it is. So... yeah.
If you don't worry about it, that'll be the same case. It'll just naturally not matter, dry, whatever, but just by not worrying about it and swallowing if you have to, without making a big thing out of it.
Yeah, I would actually, in order for me to find the best balance, I personally get up, take a drink of water, get dressed, not get dressed, but stretch, whatever, and then when I go back to bed, I'll feel very comfortable. And
I actually right now feel more comfortable when I don't even get up in the first place, although it makes it a little bit tricky for maintaining awareness. I'm more likely to fall asleep. But like I said, I would rather go in that direction.
it just makes things a lot easier. I think if you have your head upwards a little bit, that should help with the urge to swallow, but yeah, I might even talk more about this some other days if I listen to this and think of other things. Because, yes, I listen to these and stuff. So, and then another issue I have is the urge to move sometimes. So, like, I'll maybe stay still for about 10 minutes and then nothing's working. I'm like, just forget it. Or something, and yeah, and then it doesn't work, but then I might have a diode or something after I finally fall asleep.
Again, that's because I suddenly stopped worrying about it, and just like that, I fell asleep. You don't worry about it as you're attempting it. It could happen, fall asleep during the attempt too. So, again, that happened most likely because I stopped worrying about it, and yeah, so.
But yeah, so I would just, in terms of what am I talking about again? I can't think at this point. Yeah, just ignoring the rollover urge and stuff, and then trying too hard is another mistake I keep on making. Don't overdo it, no matter what. So,
That overdoing is kind of true. Just do the wild technique, and everything will just kind of fall into place.
yeah, since then I noticed that I started to think that, I noticed my breathing kept changing when it finally started. Like, my heart rate suddenly went up, and I thought that I was getting excited, and I was thinking that that was holding me back. I need to figure out how to not get excited all of a sudden. But that feeling of your heart rate going up is actually completely normal. And your breathing might go up a little bit too, potentially. But
All of it's normal, don't worry.
no matter what you do, don't try to change it. Just
That doesn't really matter a whole lot either. Just go with what feels natural and don't question anything. Just do what feels natural.
so when your heart rate goes up, that is actually completely normal. Try to stay completely still and relax, but don't overdo it, because if you try to relax like you have a conscious motive, that could actually cause you to mess up. So I don't recommend trying that.
Don't worry about it. It'll probably be fine.
So, yeah. What am I saying again? Try to relax when you're doing what?
The answer is a lot simpler than all this stuff I was talking about right here. I mean, you probably sum up the real stuff in a few minutes with the good information, probably. But here, as you can see, this involves a lot of overcomplicating and thinking about stuff that's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, try to relax when your heart rate goes up and stuff like that. That is actually normal. You don't really need to do anything but stay still, and that might actually be around the time you start noticing hypnagogic imagery too. That's like the stars and shapes and colors that you start seeing in your vision underneath your eyelids. That's completely normal. It's normal if it happens and stuff. That's hypnagogic imagery. And whenever that happens, then yeah, focus on it, but don't become emotionally attached and stuff. Just notice that they're there and let them drift. But pay attention to them in the sense that you're gonna stay awake and stuff, right? So yeah, if normal when your heart rate goes up, and I also noticed that when that hypnagogic imagery comes up, my eyes naturally want to follow it, if that makes sense, right? Because if the imagery is moving from, let's say, left to right, my eyes naturally want to follow it, and I'm trying not to focus on it, right? Well, don't don't change anything. Like, your eyes following it, just follow it. That's completely normal too, by the way.
Again, just engage with the process, go with the flow. And my eyes naturally want to follow it. That's gone with the flow. Also, when I'm dreaming, if my eyes are moving in the dream, it's likely moving in exactly the same way in real life. Just like in this state. It's no different than interacting with a dream technically, so it doesn't matter. Just engage with it.
I would have thought that would have screwed up my results, right? Because if you move your eyes because of the shapes that you see, whereas if you're asleep, like if you're asleep, you wouldn't be doing that, would you? The shapes would be there, but you wouldn't be trying to follow them.
You probably heard of rapid eye movement. I think it's called that for this very reason, and it is normal during a dream if that happens.
Would you if you're asleep? Well, that might be kind of normal. And you know that when we dream it's rapid eye movement, our eyes kind of move back and forth. I almost wonder if it does that because of the hypnagogic imagery and stuff like that. Maybe something related to that, even while we're asleep.
It might be something related to that and dreaming.
Because
It's all part of dreaming.
when we naturally do those things, those are actually considered unconscious motives. And obviously, if you're afraid of your eyes moving like I was, I'll try to keep them still. That's a conscious motive, and that can screw yourself up. So keep your eyes still. And no matter whatever naturally happens, just try to keep
Just do whatever feels natural. It doesn't matter.
it happening if you can, because a conscious motive will screw it up, and there's a chance that your eyes moving like that is an unconscious motive. And I wonder if that's why your eyes rapidly move and stuff. That's why it's called REM sleep. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so yep. So try not to make those mistakes. Like, if you see the hypnagogic imagery and your eyes naturally want to follow it, just let it do its thing. If your breathing changes, just keep that whatever it wants to be at. Don't try to change it. And if your heart rate goes up, try to stay completely still. That is actually normal. That's an unconscious motive. So, I think that's pretty much all I can think of for wild right now, off the top of my head.
Okay, so as you can see, I had a ton of information wrong. This shows the importance of doing research and for this type of subject, self-exploration, because we just don't know. A lot of things can vary between people. But as you can see, it's a lot simpler than I'm implying right here. Just go with the flow. Honestly, that's like practically the answer to all of this. Just go with the flow, do what feels right, and don't worry about whether it actually is right or not. Just do it without questioning, really. So yeah, that shows the importance of research, and obviously I was very passionate about it, so naturally I'll be sharing those ideas. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this live stream. I might do another one, I'm not really sure, because I did do one last year too. I did quite a lot, but I don't have time to react to all of them, of course. This was only a 40-minute reaction, but yet look at how long this stream has been going on for. So I might react to some of the recent ones though, because it kind of ties with what I've been doing recently, and a lot of the stuff I shared with that is entirely false, I think. I'm thinking about details that are completely irrelevant. Once again, just kind of go with the flow. And yeah, a lot of these things don't even matter that I was talking about in those recordings, so I might react to those ones sometime. It just takes a lot of time and all that, so it might be a while. But Yeah, I believe that is it. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know. I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. So thanks for watching and have a good one. Peace.